There's something surreal about opening your front door on a quiet Saturday morning and seeing someone you've never met finger shaking, threatening to have you arrested over a tree. That was my introduction to Maple Grove. Not a neighborly hello, not a batch of welcome cookies, but Laura Williams screaming at me like she'd just uncovered a criminal empire in my front yard. She jabbed her finger at my maple tree too tall, she said, breaking some brand new HOA law. The kicker. My house wasn't even in the HOA. I had the paperwork signed and sealed. But the thing that made my skin crawl wasn't the yelling or the thick stack of violation notices she shoved at me. It was the way she kept peering through the doorway, counting corners, taking in every detail of my place. Whatever was going on, it wasn't just about rules or trees. There was a plan, and somehow I was at the center of it. My name's Ben Mitchell. Maple Grove was supposed to be a fresh start, a quiet street, a little house with a white fence and a garden I could call my own. Years of work scraping by, and I finally got my sanctuary. I figured the biggest problem I'd have would be weeds or squirrels, not a bureaucratic witch hunt. But from that first morning, it was like the air shifted, and the simple life I'd wanted started slipping away. Laura showed up at exactly 7:30 a.m., stiff as a board, every part of her outfit screaming authority. "I'm Laura Williams, Vice President of Maple Grove HOA," she announced, holding out those documents like search warrants. "You're in serious violation of community standards." I'd seen that tone before, the kind people use when they believe they own the room. "What violations exactly?" I asked, doing my best to keep it calm. Years of handling conflict had taught me a few tricks, but this wasn't just another angry customer. This was a storm. She rattled off the charges: door color, tree height, mailbox color. Each word felt like she was reading me my rights. I handed her my proof. No HOA, not now, not ever. She didn't care. She barely even glanced at the papers before launching into some story about emergency municipal restructuring, zoning ordinances, public safety. The longer she talked, the more it sounded like a trap, a bureaucracy built to swallow you whole. She gave me 48 hours to fix things or face $500 a day fines. I told her that under state law I'd need certified notification. She just stared, and in that second her gaze drifted into my house like she was mapping the place in her mind. After she left, her car stayed parked across the street. She watched my house for over an hour, no knocking, just sitting. That night she came again, this time about lighting compliance. When I stood my ground, she got aggressive, craning her neck to see past me, eyes flicking around my living room and kitchen. I told her to take it up with the city if she had a problem. That's when Mrs. Johnson from next door shuffled over, looking genuinely afraid. She told me about the Andersons and the Petersons families who got hit with daily fines, random inspections, complaints that always seemed to come from nowhere. They lost their homes for peanuts bought up by an investment group. Guess whose nephew was on the deed? The HOA president's. It wasn't random. It was a business, and people like Laura were running the show. The next morning, Laura tried being friendly, fishing for my schedule, dropping hints about cooperation. Every word was a threat wrapped in small talk. Resistance creates complications that tend to affect entire families. She made a show of measuring, photographing, narrating her official HOA business for the neighbors. It felt like she wanted everyone to know nobody is safe. That afternoon, the mailbox and my front door were covered in official-looking violation notices. More fines, bigger threats. I called the city planning office myself, ready for answers. The clerk was baffled. No emergency ordinances, no city enforcement for HOAs. "Sounds fishy," she said, and suggested I talk to an attorney. When Laura came back, I confronted her with what I'd learned. She tried to bluff, said the ordinances were pending. When I demanded real documents, nothing but excuses. The threats grew more desperate. That night, she sat on the curb making phone calls, sometimes pointing at my house, sometimes snapping pictures. The words, "Phase 2 implementation confirmed. Everything is proceeding according to plan," carried across the street, not meant for my ears. That was the night everything changed. I'd suspected a setup, so I'd installed cameras, set up surveillance in my garage. While Laura thought she was watching me, I was watching her. Morning came and Laura waited until she saw my car leave before calling 911. She told dispatch she heard screaming and breaking furniture inside my house. The police showed up fast, exactly as planned. Laura played the terrified neighbor, handed over the emergency key she'd gotten from the previous owner, and entered my home with the officers all on the up and up. Inside, she moved quick, planting a pill in a kitchen drawer, stashing a fake evidence bag behind some cookbooks. She took photos, made sure the scene was perfect. The officer, satisfied, left without finding anything amiss. Laura stepped outside, feeling like she'd just pulled off the heist of the century. Except this time, the story didn't end with a homeowner getting railroaded out of the neighborhood. I was waiting for her detective's badge on my chest uniform, crisp, standing in the driveway as she closed the door behind her. Her face drained of color when she saw me. "What exactly were you doing inside my house?" The words came out flat. "Professional." She stammered, tried to spin a story about a noise complaint, but she was still holding the evidence bag. I radioed for backup, recited her rights, and watched the truth collapse in front of me. She broke fast, pointing the finger at Morrison, the HOA president, and confessed to the whole operation. Forced sales, planted evidence, families ruined. Within minutes, half the neighborhood was watching. Laura's phone buzzed. Morrison calling to check on his operation. The police let her answer, and in front of a growing crowd, Morrison's voice spilled out over the speaker: threats, confessions, desperate attempts to cover his tracks. The neighborhood erupted. Phones were out. Live streams started. It was over for them. The trial was huge. Front-page news, packed courtroom. Laura got 11 years. Morrison 33. Restitution paid to every victim. The HOA board dissolved. Corrupt councilman investigated. Maple Grove was free, finally, after years of being ruled by fear. Back home, my mailbox was stuffed with thank you notes. The Andersons, forced out the year before, wrote, "You saved our family." Kids played in the street again. Neighbors waved. Mrs. Johnson, who'd lived in terror, now led a coalition to keep the community honest. Sometimes I sit on the porch and let the peace settle in, thinking about what it means to really have power. It's not about who shouts the loudest or writes the biggest fine. It's about standing your ground quietly until the truth has nowhere left to hide. Here's the thing that still sticks with me. In every neighborhood, there's someone who thinks their title lets them bend the rules. Where does authority end and abuse begin? What would you do if the people in charge turned on you? Have you ever had to fight back against someone who thought you were too small to matter? Tell your story below, because the more we speak up, the less room there is for corruption to grow. And that's the kind of neighborhood everyone deserves.